If this is your first time here, my name is Chuck Tuck, and I am the host of The Raw Vibe. So, today's podcast, we're going to talk about dating. Are any of you out there in that situation where you're looking for a date, or you're trying to find a date? Maybe you've just come across a lot of bad dates. What about if you are in your 40s, 50s, or maybe even 60s? It just seems like things get a little bit tougher with the older you get. And you know what I've seen is not only does it get a little bit tougher the older you get, but it seems like the younger folks these days in the late teens, early 20s, they just, I don't know, maybe they're not dating. But for me, I think dating is really important, that connection. Because we're going to find out from Dr. Victoria Vaughn today on a lot of different things on dating as a senior, where she's going to cover things about sex, the difference between lovemaking and just intimacy. So what is the difference? Stick around and you're going to find out a lot about this. This is The Raw Vibe. I'm with Dr. Victoria Vaughn today, and we're going to talk about dating as a senior. You kind of jumped into this pond after 30 years of marriage. So this kind of go towards anybody over the age of 50. But the book that we're talking about is kind of like a dating memoir, a guide to dating, the pitfalls and all that. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's called, The Frogs I Kissed Before I Finally Found My Prince. And this could be for prince or princesses out there.
It applies to same-sex couples as well. So, right. I was very lucky. I did find my prince. Unfortunately, he relocated to heaven a couple of years ago. But I'm not going to date anymore. As a senior, we all have baggage. We've had loss either through divorce or death or both. And that's what's really different than dating when you're 22. We're not in high school anymore. And so not only are the pickings a little slim, the pond is full of people like us who have baggage. You know, I guess I should never say never, but I don't want to go through any of this again.
And I was doing a little research, and there are currently over 60 plus million seniors. And out of that, nearly 30% are single or living alone.
Right. Correct.
The pool seems rather large in terms of numbers, but it's difficult.
It is. Especially, I used a lot of, I actually found my prince on eHarmony, which is one of the better dating sites, because it seemed to me like the free ones, there were more scammers there. And there are probably more scammers out there now than there were when I was doing this. So I guess I would just be wary of that nowadays.
When you say scammers, I think about people who over-exaggerate, embellish on their profiles and things like that. And currently, I've been seeing this advertisement for one of these 48-hour programs where some woman was scammed out, and then the guy comes on, an attractive guy, look good. Something about, I've been hurt too, or something like that. I can't
Right.
remember. But so you chuckle about this, the embellishing of the profile.
Right.
So
Well, here's the deal with that.
tell.
It's eventually going to catch up with you because you can't live that lie forever. I mean, and that's what I advise people. You be you, because whoever you find is going to love you, warts and all, no matter what. You don't have to embellish anything. You don't have to lie, because they will love you no matter what. But, I think what happens too is that given our age, our ripe old ages, we get kind of in a hurry and we think, oh my goodness, I better go ahead and latch onto this one while I have a chance.
Limited time.
Yeah, so we're putting a square peg into a round hole, and that doesn't work either. And, the reverse is true too. If you've embellished yours, if I've embellished mine, I'm going to get pretty tired keeping that facade up all the time. It's going to be daunting and wear people out.
So what have you and what did you run across as far as these profiles where the men embellished a bit?
Well, they would embellish their title, their position in their company, their incomes, their education, the number of times they'd been married or involved in a serious relationship. Maybe they'd kind of leave out something really important, like, oh yeah, by the way.
Still married.
Exactly. That's the worst kind, but yeah. And women can do that too. When I was doing this, I'm a retired educator. uh, and a college administrator. So I was making a pretty decent salary, but there were men that were intimidated by that, not only by the education, but also by the income. And I thought, okay, well, you're not for me. You have to accept me warts and all, just like I'll accept you.
I don't know why men or some men are afraid of women that make more money. I'd say, hey, bring it on, bring it home.
Well, see, that speaks to your self-confidence as well, because if you are, and that's what I loved about my prince, he was not intimidated by that. He was retired too. I was still working, and he had a great job. He's an accountant. He worked at General Motors for 30 years. So he was doing very well. But, one of the cutest things he ever said to me, he found out I was a college dean. And he said, how do I get to be on the dean's list? That was sweet. We were together 13 years whenever he passed away. They were great, great years. But anyway, that's the reason I wrote this book. I was actually grieving him one day, and I thought, I had to go through a lot of frogs to get to you. And I started recalling some of those stories, and I'd write them down, and I'd put them away, and I'd come back another day and read them again. And they made me laugh, and it kind of became very cathartic for me to relive those, even though it was awful at the time. But I was thinking, oh my word. And I had a friend read, I had about 10 or 12 stories by then, and I had a friend read it. She said, you might think about putting this in a book. I'd never thought of that. But as I went on, I kept thinking, I kind of wish I would have had this book whenever I was dating. It would have helped me a lot. I could have avoided a lot of pitfalls and mistakes.
Yeah, and I bet you, like I said, even though this was 20 years ago or so for you, it's still the same thing. Still the
Exactly.
same pitfalls, or still the same people who exaggerate, embellish in their
Right.
profiles. So this is forever green. It's not dated, and it won't be
Right.
outdated. No pun intended
Oh,
on that.
exactly. I know exactly what you mean. And I'm kind of glad too, because, dating has been around. All species mate. It's a fact of life. Whenever we're about 13 or 14 and our hormones start to rage and we start getting interested in finding a mate, a male or a female, whichever your choice is, you know, that just happens. And so dating has been around forever, and it will continue to be around forever. The reason I wrote this, though, is because the pond, like I said, is a little different now than when we were in high school.
It sure is. Aside from having or feeling that we had plenty of
Right,
time, except now definitely there's a time
right.
crunch. There's a lot of other things that go into finances and stuff like that, but I want to jump into that later. I still want to touch a little bit about this embellishing, and then the type of people who embellish, and then, the people who fall for the embellishments. I know, like you said in your situation, well, I don't want to put words into your mouth, but you're looking for somebody who's kind of on that equal playing field, not too far down, whatever it might be, finances, life situation. But I hear oftentimes, and I'm not gonna, it's not chauvinistic, but this is what I hear most of the time from my friends who are single that were female over the years. Well, I'm not going to date him. He doesn't make enough. And it's like, well, you make $20,000 and you want somebody that gets 250 to 500? Your lives are in a different place. Well, I, I deserve more. It's like, well,
You know,
they might think that you're the froggy. I don't know.
exactly. Women can be frogs too. Don't get me wrong. I mean, there are women frogs out there too. Those are called, what do you call it? Yes,
Gold
thank you.
diggers.
Men and women are gold diggers too. So, well, I always found it was easier to date your wage or no finance, no romance. I mean, I did encounter guys who were in a lot of credit card debt, and they made a lot of
Mhm.
spending mistakes. And at the time, I didn't have credit card debt. I still do pay off my credit cards every month, but not everybody adheres to that, and that's okay. You. But for me, that's not, I didn't want to be bogged down with somebody else's mistakes. I know it sounds very selfish, but I had to take care of myself too. So,
Yeah. Yeah, that financial part is very important, I think, and even, at a young age, or maybe more so when you get
mhm.
older, I think it shows not credibility, but it shows somewhat of a personality of the person if they're not responsible enough. The outside, he or she may look very attractive and very great and have it all together. Like I said, if you get together, you're married, next thing you know, you've got a joint account, you're going, "Huh?
Right, exactly.
How much is owed? I didn't buy
Right.
anything."
And that speaks to responsibility, just like you said. Are they responsible enough to take care of what's been given to them? Um, and I would meet people that had cashed in their 401k to buy a boat or a lake house and I think, my word, that's supposed to be for your future. I mean, and I also think it speaks to people's securities or insecurities too. If they have to surround themselves with things, they have to manifest who they are by what they show other people that they have. They have to drive the latest model Tesla or Cadillac or GMC, whatever. And I often wonder because I always pay cash for my cars too, and I have a financial guy and he says, no, you can finance it at 1%. I mean, but no, I don't want that. But I don't have to be pretentious and drive something that I can't afford. Does that make sense?
It does, and in fact, you just squashed my thought of getting a Corvette.
You know what? If you have the means to do it, you be you, Chuck. Go for it.
I better go back to the drawing table and figure out why am I wanting one of those. But all of this is you're right. People who cash in the 401k, the first thing that comes to my mind is, okay, that was for your future. So is this what your future is or is like? So am I a temporarily part-time because I look good? And then what happens when those warts come in and everything sags on men and
Right. Yeah.
women? Am I going to get kicked to the curb or
Right.
what?
That's not based on anything deep and abiding. And like I said, that's why those embellished profiles won't last because eventually you'll see through to what they are about.
Yeah, yeah. Is there, from your book, is there a particular situation that you could tell us a little bit about when you went on a date, or maybe some more of these pitfalls and how to avoid them?
Great question. Yes, there are a lot of those stories. And by the way, I have takeaways too, what I learned. One of the, uh, okay, so what I would try to do is I would meet them on the dating app and we would try to um, talk on the phone at the time. We talk on the phone, and I try to get to know them, and they'd get to know me. And we tell each other, I was married and I'm divorced and I have 2 kids and blah 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 blah. And then I'd always try to meet them at a public place, which is usually a Barnes and Noble because I love to read. And I figured if it didn't work out, I'd just buy a book and go home. But I guess one of the worst ones I encountered was a guy. He was great to talk on the phone. He was so funny. Agreed to meet, and I show up. And I'd always try to be there a little early. And by the way, I'd always shower and look really nice to go to the Barnes and Noble. And he walks in and it's like he had been cleaning out his garage all day and working. And he goes, oh, I guess I better go to Barnes and Noble and meet her. He didn't even shower. And I was thinking, oh my word, I learned is I should have said, no, bye. Come back whenever you're showered. In fact, well, I did do that and I shouldn't have done that. I should have said, bye. We're out of here. I'm out of here. But oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Time slipped by. I know. And I said, okay, fine. So we agreed to meet the next week. He looked 100% better, which isn't saying a lot because, anytime you come in after having cleaned out your garage all day and then, you shower, you're going to look better. So then he just starts talking and he starts using the N word and making racial slurs. And I thought, Archie Bunker kind of showed up here. Who are you? And it was just so obnoxious and toxic. I had to end it right. I could not abide being around somebody like that. But my point of all this is that it took time. It took several phone calls. I did meet him in person once, and then I agreed to meet him again. And then his true colors show up. That was the biggest
Mhm.
disappointment because I thought, why didn't I see this? What is wrong with me? And I'd always kind of beat myself up about that. What's going on here? How come I didn't see that? But that was one of them. And does that answer your question? Do you want to hear any more?
It does, and it makes me. I want to ask then, when do we know enough is enough kind of situation? Like you said, you got there the first time, you're thinking, I should have just left, but you gave it another chance. He looked good. But I do hear, because I've friends have been in the dating pool, but I do hear friends that say, "Well, I'm gonna give it another
Right.
chance. I'm gonna give it another chance." It's if the person is so far from you, why would you give it a chance? Can you answer that for somebody out there who
I
is doing
know.
the ones?
I so empathize with that person because I've been there. I mean, you want to see the good in everybody and you want to try, okay, you know, I, okay, he forgot. Okay. I mean, I didn't forget, but he did. I don't know. It's just the forgiving nature that we have. And I guess we're so hopeful. And again, we're thinking, well, it's not going to hurt anything if I give him another chance. I mean, really, it's just time. But then you realize time is pretty valuable too. So my advice, I don't know that I have any advice for that because I know that people do that. I did it, and it's just the way we are. We're just built that way.
And I guess, like you said, it's you know why you did it. You don't know why you
Mhm.
did it, but you do know why you did it. But it's different for every person, right?
Exactly.
It just because they read your book, your memoir, and go, "Oh, I've kissed a couple of
Yeah.
frogs. I think I'm gonna. This is
Yeah.
good. This is." They tell themselves, "This is good. This is good. This
Yeah.
is good," trying to convince themselves. But that's probably okay if you're in your
Right.
20s, but not when you're 50
Right. You know what
plus.
they're doing? They're settling. And,
Hmm.
that's one of my main takeaways, don't settle. And that is so much easier said than done, Chuck. It's so easy to fall into that trap of, oh, okay, I can make this work. And the truth is, again, it's not going to work because you're settling. You're not getting what you really deserve and want. And that's where we have to be selfish sometimes to think of ourselves. I was going to settle many times, and thank goodness my daughters came in and go, "What? Are you crazy?" No.
There's that word deserve, like I said from earlier. It's kind of a fine line, though, isn't it? It's there are those who deserve, but then talking about that deserving, and embellishing, I think it's that other side too, where some say, "Well, I'm not going to settle because I deserve more." As an example, that $20,000 income person looking for a quarter of a million, and a half a million, who has it all every already, men or women, whichever
You know,
side.
I don't wanna sound like a snob, but that is so unrealistic to expect that. I really do feel sorry for that person. Again, and I'm not saying lower your expectations, I'm not saying that, but I am saying be realistic about it. Because, probably the $250,000 a year person has, I don't know, maybe a country club membership or something. Something that, there's nothing wrong with wanting to have that, but if it's I don't know how you're going to find somebody like that in the $20,000 a year range. That sounds really terrible for you to say, but it's true. Just, 50,000. Hey, that's not so far-fetched. That's realistic, but 250,000, I don't know.
That word, that key word you said is be realistic. You don't have to lower your expectations, just be realistic about
Mhm.
your expectations. And I think that's hard probably for a lot of us. And then it goes back to the embellishment with nowadays the online, oh, these filters
Oh my
that take 30 years off of you. And then you go maybe meet them, you go,
right.
I was meeting your son or your daughter. Who are you? Oh, that's me. Like, well, what happened? Nothing. Did you use the filter? Well, of course I did. I wanted to look better. What do you do? Have you run across that
Yes,
situation where
yes,
you
yes,
somebody's
right.
picture like 10 years off?
So, I had one guy, that said he looked like George Clooney's first cousin. He
Yeah.
wasn't anywhere near the George Clooney ancestry tree, Chuck. God love him. He looked more like a cross between the love child between Alfred E. Newman and Andy Griffith. Big ears and freckles, and he was very funny though. He could really make me laugh. But I mean, that's just delusional to think you look like George Clooney's first cousin, and then you really look like Andy Griffith and Alfred E. Newman. But
Oh,
but it's kind of a double standard here because no matter what they look like. You, as a woman, better look like Cameron Diaz or Sofia Vergara because even though you're 55 and, have sagging everything, um, yeah, you better look better than your age. It's kind of a double standard.
It I would imagine, yes, that it
Mhm.
is, and then still continue with this embellishment type of situation is I think it probably makes it more difficult because then you're gonna be fighting an uphill battle because you've set this expectation of the person who's coming to meet you, and then immediately they'll go, "You don't
Right.
look anything
Right.
like that
Right.
picture." So now that guy or that gal is fighting an uphill battle to try to say, you know, "This is the real me.
Right.
I'm lovable."
Just be you.
And the only thing that's stuck in your
Yeah.
head is, "You sure don't look like that picture. You sure don't look like
Well,
that picture."
I think had he told me I look like Andy Griffith and the love child between Andy Griffith and Alfred E. Newman, I would have thought, hey, that's cool. Cause Andy Griffith is married 3 times. I mean, somebody loved him. So, and I always thought he was a great entertainer. So
Yeah.
why not? So, but unfortunately he didn't couch it that way initially.
Hence, it's an uphill battle if you do that to
Uh-huh.
yourself, and that's the person who's putting up the profile, but, you're both in that dating pool, but
Right.
yeah.
Now you be you. The only thing I was always afraid about was weight. I mean, I'm 5'6". My dad was 6'4" and weighed 240. My mom was 5'4" and weighed 120. So I'm kind of in between there.
Mhm.
But my only challenge was to find men who weren't who I outweighed. I mean, that was my main criteria. Please, Lord, don't let a whiff of wind come and blow them away.
Hey, what's wrong with that?
You be you. It's just that for me, I had to have somebody that was at least 5'6" because that's how tall I am. Weighed at least 140 because that's what I weigh.
You don't wanna try to carry him out in the fire if he's well, I mean, it might be easier if he's, a buck and a quarter, 125 or something.
Right, yeah, right. So, but I found that the taller guys liked the petite women, the 5'2s, the 100 pounds. I'll never be that. So, but that was always a challenge too for me to find somebody at least that was at least as tall as I was and at least weighed what I did.
It's funny that you say that in particular is so I have a friend, really very good friend. He and his wife, they always used to joke, "Well, we're gonna find you a girlfriend." And nope, 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 nope. And then finally, there's one that just I've never met the gal, but his wife said she's available now, and I said, "Yeah, I'm game, okay." He messaged me like the day after. He goes, "Nope, you're not gonna do it." And I was like, "Why?" And he goes, "Because she's 5 feet tall, and it would look funny."
Really? Was he
Because
tall? Was he
Um,
tall?
she's only 5 feet tall, so I'd be 10 inches plus or so taller than she
For
is, and he just
him.
said, "It would look funny, don't do it." I'm thinking,
Yeah.
"Why?"
All right. Yeah. But, again, I
But
have to be me too. I was just, like I said, if I felt like I could lift up the guy and put him over my shoulder and, I don't know. But on the other hand, he didn't have to be Hercules or Tarzan. He just had to be taller than me at least. That was my criteria. That's
yeah,
all I wanted.
there's nothing wrong about I'll use the word aesthetics and looking like you belong together. It's
Right.
a 6'4" guy with a 5'2" gal. It does it's like, well, a circus
Right. Yeah.
act.
I mean, you kind of wonder how in the world are they ever going to get together because he's so tall and she's so short. But, it happens all the time. But, yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yes. I want to ask you this, and it's that personal question, and feel free to answer it or not answer it. I think the older we get, one of the one of the fears is having sex, lovemaking. Have I lost it? Oh, my body doesn't look the same.
that's a great question. I'm so glad you asked that because there is a difference between intimacy and sex.
Hmm.
Obviously, the older we get, yes, our bodies do change. I mean, I've had both my knees replaced. What can I say? There are a lot of people in my age group just like me. Uh, you can still have intimacy without actually having intercourse. And I think that's one thing that we have to keep in mind as we age too. Because a lot of men at our age, I'm talking about my age, not your age, really have more challenges with the sex part of it. They take little blue pills and things like that, but you can still have intimacy. You can still show someone affection without actually having intercourse. And I think that's important to keep in mind as well.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up because there is a difference between intimacy, being intimate, and having sex. Sex is one thing. Intimacy can be holding hands, could be kissing. You're never going to get too old to grow out of doing that unless you just don't want to.
Absolutely.
It's the meeting of minds is how I look
Right.
at it.
Right.
You know, that's part of that equal balanced playing field is, hey, this is where we're at, but I sure love being in your presence. It makes me feel good inside.
Exactly. And that's what you want. You want somebody who really wants to be with you, warts and all, you know? So, and the other thing about sex, I'll just say this, is that if a relationship is based on sex, that's not a firm foundation at all. Because here's why. As we age, we get illnesses and things happen to us, and we can't necessarily perform like we could when we were 20 years younger. So what's going to happen when that happens? When the sex is gone, where's the relationship? It's not founded on
Yeah,
anything solid.
right. I mean, me personally, I want to be able to have a mental orgasm 24/7, whenever, wherever I want. I don't want to have to stop and try and then it doesn't work and be
Right,
disappointed. You know,
exactly. Yeah. I love that mental orgasm. That's awesome.
when you're in that type of relationship, it does give you that you can have it anywhere. It's just that feeling that you have inside. And you know, it's a great feeling.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Yeah. You just want to be around them. You can't get enough of being
Yeah.
with them. And they feel the same thing same way about you too. And that's whenever you know you have a great connection.
Yes. Yep. And we all want that bottom line is that connection.
Right. Right.
So, Dr. Victoria Vaughn, where can people go to find your book about these frogs that you've kissed?
Okay, well, you can find it on Amazon, of course. You can go to Barnes and Noble and order it from there. You can go to my website, ohthefrogs.com. And by the way, I have a frog test on my website. So if you get involved with somebody and you think, yeah, this might be the one, you can take the frog test. Now, let me just preface this by saying it's not scientifically organized or anything. It's just for fun. And to find your prince or princess, the bar is pretty high because I based it on my prints. If you think, wow, this person's perfect, and it comes back, hey, you got a frog here. Don't worry about it. Or maybe you should worry about it. Depends on, where the score is. But and sometimes it's self-scoring, by the way, and it'll say, yeah, you can throw this one back into the pond. Don't go any further.
There's one last thing that I would like to ask you, and that is when you're in this dating pool or you're out there dating, and maybe this was in your kind of your situation because you already mentioned it. Should you listen to outside people, your friends and whatnot? Because you mentioned your daughter is like, no, no, mom, that's not happening, not him. How how much weight should that carry?
That's another good question. You've got a lot of really great questions here. I always did listen to my family because they know me best. But as far as friends and associates, it depends on where they are in your relationship with them. I don't know how to say this. If you're around somebody who might be envious of you, they might be steering you the wrong way.
I gotcha. Yep.
On the other hand, if you have a trusted friend that has your best interests at heart, you can listen to them. But I guess first and foremost, you have to listen to yourself. And if there's something in the back of your mind that's saying, this is just it's not ticking. It's not just not right. Then that's the time you need to let it go and move on.
Wise words.
I was going to say is you got to learn to forgive yourself. This book is full of my
Uh,
mistakes. Oh my word! And I've since reflected back and think, oh my word, you're so highly educated, but you're so incredibly stupid. But on the other hand, in my defense, I hadn't dated in 30 years. Yeah. And I guess that's where I'd say to other people that are out there looking for love is that unless you can, what's the word, driving on all cylinders, there's something amiss. So move on. And it's so hard to do whenever we're older.
you know what? this leads me to say this is that we often hear people say, follow your heart. But I honestly think in this situation, in these situations, you need to almost go 50-50, follow your heart and your brain, because sometimes your heart will tell you it's okay, go ahead. Your brain is convincing yourself, but you got to flip that switch and go, wait a second. If my brain is trying to convince me, or my heart's trying to convince the brain, there shouldn't be any convincing.
Exactly.
It's almost like it should be just a natural
Right.
connection.
Again, it's that square peg and round hole thing. You're trying to make it fit. And if there's something in your brain or your heart that's saying, then listen to yourself. But again, I always relied on my daughters too. Their insight was so much sharper than mine because I was so in love. I'm so grateful that they said, Mom, are you nuts? No, this is a big no.
Sometimes we're too close. They're too close to the fire. And it's just like, oh, that warmth feels good. No, you're going to get burned.
And by the way, they loved my prince. His name was Don. He's Hart in the book. And I was very glad that they did because I liked him by that time too. And I was also glad that his
Yeah.
kids liked me because that's also important too.
Another dynamic. Yep.
Right. Yes. We all have, part of our baggage is our families. And I've seen people that move full speed ahead, even though neither, the children, one or the other, maybe didn't like the other person. And I've had friends that have kind of waited it out, let them kind of buy into it, the kids, that is, and then they would proceed. That's something that you have to discuss with your family. I mean, that takes a very deep conversation between everybody. If you're thinking about going further with somebody like marriage, you definitely want everybody on board with your choices.
We could talk forever about this kind of stuff because I was going to say a lot. In a way, that seems unfair because it's my life. Why should it matter to you, my kids, my relatives? It's my life. But oddly enough, it has an effect on their life and your
Right.
life.
Right.
So, like I said, it keep the discussion open just in case.
Right. Yeah. And my husband's he'd been married 44 years and his wife had passed away. And I could feel sometimes from his daughter that maybe she didn't really like me. And he said, no, she does. She does. It's taking her a while. But it did take a while for that relationship to grow. Now, I love her. She loves me. But it did take a while. His son was on board from day one. But in fact, his son told him, Dad, you're going to go on eHarmony. But it took the daughter a little while longer. Now, my two daughters were pretty much on board right away because, like I said, they'd met some frogs and they knew he wasn't a frog. And my son-in-law and my daughter's boyfriend, they all loved him too. So it was a great match. And I'm a very spiritual person too. I spent a lot of time praying, or I did back then. I still do now, but back then, yeah, a lot of time in prayer. For me, that's where I found solace and peace was. If I gave it to God, then things worked out for me. So. And I'm very lucky he got me out of some really unusual positions there.
Someone spoke to you and said,
Exactly right.
But again, there's so much that plays into relationship. And again, so much more, it seems like the older we get. Even though the pool may seem large, it is kind of slim pickings to find somebody that's going to fit your lifestyle, your beliefs, and oh boy, your political beliefs nowadays.
Right. Yeah. Boy.
There's a lot of different dynamics that are going on now. It's like best of luck to everyone out there who's in the senior dating pool.
Right. Exactly. And you are going to have differences of opinion because you've lived life. You've got experiences, and those are golden.
Mhm.
Experience always trumps everything. No matter how
Yeah.
highly educated you are, your experiences are the ones that are going to bring you through. So, and to me, I look back on that time, I reflect back and I think, boy, I'm so thankful that I got through it. But I'm also thankful that I went through it because it gave me so much more insight. And I guess I knew whenever I finally did meet Don, hey, this is the one for me. And fortunately, I was
Yeah.
the one for him, which, by the way, if it doesn't work both ways, it's not going to work either. I mean, you might be my prince, but if I'm not your princess, too bad for me. But
One of my criteria is I don't want to talk about the age part, but if I say, oh, I love AC/DC, and they go, don't you mean ABCD? I go, no, I mean AC/DC. That's not how you do that. Alphabets ABCD. I'm like, nope, that doesn't work for me.
I actually preferred to go Dutch initially because I didn't always get my way. I mean,
Yes.
sometimes they'd, give me the bill, and sometimes they'd pick up the bill either way. But I was going to make a point, even though you've been single for basically 16 years, it's
Hmm.
okay. You know what? That's a choice that you've made. And I don't blame you for taking your time to source out dates and figure out who's right for you. And if there's somebody out there for you, it'll happen. And if there's not, it's not going to happen. Don't put a square peg into a round hole. Don't settle. You be you.
Yep. Hey, you know what? We're talking and we're getting personal. I'll tell you one thing. There's maybe one, but my issue is I still act like a kid. I'm responsible. I own everything. I'm like you. It's all cash. I own
Good for
everything.
you. You can get that
I'm
Corvette.
still,
I'm giving you permission to get that Corvette.
there's a long story to that too. The thing is, they have to fit my lifestyle
Right.
too. Cause I'll say there's one that we hit it off perfectly fine. But this person was a professor, a history professor, was well dressed, known at the university, had tenure, the works, black tie, formal stuff. That was a lot of what we ended up doing with the handful of times that we went out. But for somebody like that to fit into my heavy metal group and hang out, it was a too far of a stretch, I think, that I didn't want to put on them because I'm going, I am a chameleon. I could fit in a suit and
Yeah.
tie or get down with the long hair freaky people.
That's awesome that you had
No.
the insight to know yourself well enough to know that it wasn't going to fit. That's
Yeah.
very healthy, Chuck. So good for you. But, it's okay if you do take your time. That's the point I was trying to make. Because I know people get so desperate whenever we get older that they start to settle and the square peg and, all that stuff that I said before. And eventually that's just not going to work. So take your time. Be picky. Don't lower your expectations. Be realistic. Have a little discernment because it is your life and it's their life too.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, my PSA for myself, single women out there in the greater Seattle area, or you want to travel to me, come
There you
on.
go.
Let's give it a
I think
try.
that's awesome. Good for you. Seattle's a beautiful city, I'm told. I've never been there, but
It's wet, but it's
right, very
beautiful.
green. Yeah, very green.
Dr. Victoria Vaughn, thank you. This has been a lot of fun.
Thanks so much.
It's been
Yeah.
encouraging, and it's the point of all of this really is to encourage others to give it a try and to definitely seek out your book. And once again, your book is called "The Frogs I Kissed Before I Finally Found My
Right.
Prince."
Yeah. And again, you can get it at Barnes & Noble. You can get it at Amazon. You can get it on my website, ohthefrogs.com. Take the frog test. If you have a story you'd like to share about one of your dating disasters, there's an intake form you can fill out for volume 2 and 3.
I'm filling that out.
It'll be totally anonymous. We won't know who you are, but it'll be fun. I love it. I love it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you
Thank you.
again. This has been
Thank you so
wonderful.
much for having me, Chuck. I appreciate it so much. And like you said, this is an
You're
evergreen
welcome.
topic. If you want to do this again, I'm available. I'm okay with that.
You know what? I think come that mating season,
Right.
springtime,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
the people be doing the peacock dance out there. We'll have
Yeah.
to talk about this stuff again.